once again to another edition of My Opinion on Cleveland TV. My name remains Frankali Demunde, and like always, I like to remind you to keep signing up on www.cleveland.com. All right, this morning we'll have a beautiful topic of discuss, and is economic justice, migrants and liberation in South Africa. To discuss that this morning, I have two. The first one is Miss Kim Heller. Kim Heller is an independent political analyst and also the author of the book No White Lies, Black Politics and the White Politics in South Africa. Is Professor S.J. Uba. Is that right? Both of you, you're welcome to my opinion this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome on board.
Thank you.
Right, I'll start with Miss Heller. Can you please just introduce yourself? Let's get to meet you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be on your show. What an honor. I think you described me well. I'm an author of a book, and perhaps just to say quite a controversial book in South Africa, because I deal with very inconvenient truths, beginning with the fact that we speak about a democracy and freedom in South Africa and a just society, yet none of these things are in sight. So my book is about how white power has persisted in a post-apartheid South Africa and under a government that is, by all accounts, black-led and democratically elected, but yet still puts the interests of white people well above black South Africans. And it's caused a bit of controversy. I usually get interviews on international channels rather than in my own country, because I'm speaking about things that people don't want to face, that black liberation in this country has been stillborn. Thank you.
It's all right. Professor Ba, please, let's get to meet you.
Okay, thank you, Franca, for having me this morning. Okay, you've already mentioned my name. Yes, I'm Professor S.J. Uba, and I just currently serve at the UCC Start University. Okay, and I'm also a life coach, and my focus is on leadership, because we can see that leadership has dominated conversations, debates all around the world. Leadership is a global phenomenon. In fact, we're here this morning because of lack of leadership. We want to talk about issues, unfolding issues in South Africa, which is a global phenomenon. So it all revolves around leadership and access on leadership. In fact, that's my focus. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Now, I'll start with that, with what with your section. When you say leadership, okay, Ms. Heller, when you say leadership, what is leadership? What is leadership?
Well, leadership, I think I'll defer to the professor on that one. But in my view, political leadership is first and foremost, an ability to serve and look after the people that you're meant to be representing. And what we are finding in South Africa in particular, and particularly under the Cyril Ramaphosa regime, is a great distance between the people and the politicians. So we have almost an absent leadership, where there's such a gulf between those that serve and those that want to be served. And secondly, I think, and finally, from my perspective, leadership is about the abundance of ideas. And what we see in South Africa is an NC government that is bereft of ideas, that has nothing left to offer. And we have a recycling of ideas that have not helped this country. And to me, that shows an absolute absence of responsible leadership to be pursuing policies that have shown themselves to be impotent and are out of line with the needs of the ordinary people.
That's all right. Professor, why you take it on from there? You know, most of us believe that leadership is all about dominion, having dominion over others. What is your assertion of leadership? She just made mention of the fact that leadership is the ability to be able to influence people positively. So what is your own assertion of leadership?
Okay, that is this. Thank you. Looking at leadership, we need to understand that the view of leadership in Africa is very pathetic. It's a pathetic one because everyone in Africa assumes that leadership is by acquiring a whole lot of possession. So that's the philosophy of African. When I say African, including black, white, Indian, and all whoever that lives in it. So this is the view of everyone that lives in this continent. That for you to be a leader, you must have this philosophy of getting things. So you need more things to live than to live to have things. That's why there is no value for life. You see, the way we take life in this continent is unprecedented. So I see leadership. Leadership is about addressing critical issues affecting every aspect of human. So for you to do that, you must have a compelling vision. So I struggle to point fingers in Africa to say that this is my leader because of the unfolding events that we see these days. So I see leadership as the ability to see where you are coming from and where you are and where you are going, and also that ability to take people to where you all want to go. So we have leaders that are not taking people to where they want to go. So they want to go somewhere and they want to take people somewhere else. So that's why we don't have leadership here. So I see leadership as a vision ignited by a passion, okay, to compel people to achieve a common goal. That's what leadership is about. So it has to do with vision. So we need visionary leadership in Africa, which we don't have. So what we have here is a deficit of leadership, not really economy.
Thank you, Professor. Now, Ms. Hela, I'll get back to you. Now, with the kind of leadership you both explained, do you see that being manifested in Africa? Ms. Hela?
Yeah, no, I think, as the professor says, I think there's an absence that to actually pinpoint it is a challenge. And I think largely it is because politicians have not forged self-determined and self-reliant economies. And there's always a reliance on Western powers. So in a way, I always say that South Africa is a colony, actually. We're not a country. And I think that applies to many African countries, that we are still under the political and economic and cultural influence of our once-day colonial masters. And there hasn't been a compelling vision. I liked the professor speaking about vision, because that's correct. That, that is the most important thing for a leader. But we're not seeing the ideas flourish.
You answered part of my question, actually, but I would like to bring it this way. Where do you think that the African countries or leadership, where are we getting it wrong? You understand? Because if you like to, for example, look at other countries of the world, okay, aside Africa, you discover that leadership to them involves self-sacrifice. But so Africans, we are not really like that. Where did we all get it wrong? And then what can be done to curtail this trend?
I think the issue is that we are copycatting Europe and models of leadership rather than developing what would be indigenous ways of doing things. So in Africa, even knowledge systems have been contaminated by Western influence. So we have African leaders mimicking Western leaders rather than understanding what is relevant in their particular domains. And I think that's a problem. So we have black leaders still aspiring to be models of white leadership. And that's where I think the soul and the culture and the essence of black leadership has been completely overrun and colonized by whiteness. And it's that lack of affirmation. It's almost a wanting of white affirmation rather than a belief in self, which I think is at the root of the problem. And the original ideas that will suit Africa will come from Africa, not from a second-rate version, a copycat version from the Western world. And that's, to me, I believe, at the root of a problem. I think it goes back to the essence of black consciousness, where black people, black leaders are mimicking whiteness. And that is, to me, the most dangerous contamination of a people and a leader.
Thank you so much. If I could get one thing from what you said, is the fact that African leaders, we mimic the style and the interest of Europe, okay, or the Western world and all that. But Professor Oba, I need you to come in there. If we Africans must mimic the lifestyle of the Western lifestyle, why do we always choose to copy the bad aspect and then leave the good aspect?
Okay, I'd like to say that in that view, the reason why we are doing that is because we have leaders who cannot think. You see, God has given us the ability to think, but unfortunately, our leaders are not thinking. I'm going to tell you why. There is nothing that we are using today that we are using today that are imported into Africa that does not come from Africa. The technology you are using, the materials, the raw materials came from here. But because we have leaders who cannot think, can't think, therefore, we are giving away the resources that we have. And we have to give away our resources and then have to pay for the same resources to have what we already have. Why? Because we can't think. So the more you push people who are going for popularity contests into leadership, who thinks that leadership is about a show, going up and down, dressing in nice suits, driving state-of-the-art made cars, custom-made cars and all of that from Germany and America, then we are going to continue to have this kind of problem because that's where their mindset is. They are not thinking productively. We don't have creative leaders in Africa, unfortunately. We have people who go through schools, but they are not creative. There's one thing to go through school. There's another thing to be creative. Human being has capacity to be creative, to recreate your environment. You can't be complaining that you don't have this, you don't have. We have the raw materials. Why don't we bring the Europeans and Americans to explore our materials and use the same materials and produce things and send them back to us? And we have to buy them with our hard-earned money, taxpayers' money. Why can't we think and produce these things? We're in Africa. You can, okay, for instance, in Africa, we have something called palm oil. There is no other place you have that in the world. It was this palm fruit were taken from Africa to Asia and developed, planted in Asia. In fact, the Asian land cannot even accommodate it, but they have to import the sand and re-engineer it. That's agricultural engineering. They have to re-engineer the ground, the soil, to plant palm oil trees because they needed it so badly. Now, they are the biggest producer of palm oil in the world, but they got it from Africa. I mean, when you see something like this, there is no way you will appreciate our leaders. I don't think we have real leaders in Africa. And it really annoys me when I see things happening like this because we need leaders who can think. There is a big gap between leaders in Africa and the people. There is a disconnect. So that's why we are having these problems that we have today. It's not really like Africa doesn't have money. Africa doesn't have economy. We borrow money that we have because we can't think, we can't see. So this is where the problem lies. So we need a shift.
Thank you so much. You just made mention of the leaders. Now, for me, I would want to be like there's also the place of the followers as well. I don't know if you get me. Creativity doesn't have to do with just the leaders alone. Now, like you rightly say, you discover that almost everything we use in Africa, they're being imported. Now, how do you really get those things? For example, in my own country, I'm from Nigeria, I hope you know that. Now, in my own country, Nigeria, we import as little as toothpick is being imported. Seriously, you get the wood from here, you take it out, process it, and you bring it back to my country again, and then you triple the price, and then it sells to us, and then we happily get it. We are using imported toothpick. Does it really matter whether we are using imported toothpick or not? We could have asked what made that. Now, what is the place? Mr. I need to come in there. What is the place of the populace, the masses, in creativity?
I think it's a matter of a lack of self-belief. And I think I can only speak for the South African context where we have to understand that under the viciousness of apartheid, Black people were told that they were inferior and that they couldn't do much. So when the professor speaks almost about a lack of thinking, I think that what's happened in South Africa is that there's been an outsourcing of thinking to the white master under apartheid. And that hasn't changed as much as it should in what we call a free democratic South Africa. I think the average Black man and black women, they still lack self-belief in who they are, which means that a toothpick from China they're more comfortable with that than producing something of their own. We'll see, I did an interview a while ago where I spoke about how black people in this country consume white media products. They don't question it. They go to the very channels that degrade them and present them in a particular way which downgrades and degrades them. But for them, it's still that a white product and a white television station and a white bank is better. We've had in South Africa failed attempts to have a black bank, and it's actually illogical, because given that black people are in the majority, the economic power actually vests with them, but there's this cognitive inability to have faith in oneself and produce products themselves. There's always this aspiration and second bestness in terms of wanting European and Asian goods. And that's a tragedy to me of Africa as a whole, is that lack of self-reliance, that lack of self-determination. Because if that came into play, the continent would restore its majesty. It would restore its economic prowess. But we're a long way from that. And we have a bunch of leaders who are feeding into that Europe paradigm. And that's a tragedy of our times.
So I thank you so much. And I think the reason why I also bring it up as well is this. Now, I personally believe that the reason we have so much chaos and fights and wars over within, is actually because there are not enough jobs, if I should use that word, to go around everyone. If, for example, in South Africa, there are no jobs to go around everybody, both the migrants and then the original settler of the land, there will be no war in the land and no fight of asking others to leave and then asking others to stay behind. All right, so with that, we have to come to economic justice, the main topic of discourse. But before we come to that, we'll take a short break here and then we'll return shortly.
In the 21st century's technological advancement, we all seek opportunities to move and network with the emerging space. Introducing Clevenard blog and event posting. Do you think you have some interesting materials, good content, articles, and stories? Then feel free to publish them on Clevenard blog and events page, just as team of our writers are doing presently. By blogging on Clevenard's blogs and events, you benefit from our reach and network. There are a constant stream of people visiting our social platform, and we have figured out just how to distribute our contents. This means you can basically skip the line and get access to a big audience from day one. Furthermore, we can help you get in touch with important people for projects with possibilities of translating your content into other languages and republishing them on Clevenard. This helps preserve and protect your content from getting lost. What's more, you also get to be part of our team with access to our network and lots of exclusives, behind-the-scenes information. And of course, you get full credit for everything you do, which brings you popularity and make extra income. Sign up now on clevenard.com and start blogging to your advantage. Please see the tutorial video on how to blog or post events on Clevenard blogs and events. For more information, contact info@clevenard.com +34 631 279811. Website www.clevenard.com. Clevenard, your blogs, your identity. In the 21st century.
Before we went on the break, we were able to establish the fact that the reason there are chaos and internal wars within African countries is due to the fact that there are not enough jobs to go around, which is the absence of creativity within the system. Now, I'm going to take my question, the next question, and it's for Ms. Heller. Now, when you say economic justice, what do you mean by that?
Well, I speak in the context of South Africa, where I am, and I always describe myself as the original foreigner in this country, because white people invaded this continent and came through Cape Point centuries ago, and they were unwelcome visitors who actually plundered, largely took land and cattle by force, and robbed Black South Africans of their well-being as well as their cultural and family life. And what we've seen is that under apartheid that was retrenched, and under a so-called democratic Black government, we had hoped that justice would come to the fore. But 28 years later, under the NC government, very little has changed for the Black South African. Economic justice is not visible. And it's because we have a government that has never shifted the actual patterns of apartheid South Africa. So today, white people own, of all farmland, 70% of the land. They own most of the companies on the JSE, and they own the largest share of all economic sectors. And Black people remained landless in their own country. So we have a situation of dire inequality. In fact, South Africa, once the dream nation, is today the most unequal society in the world, where white people, the original foreigners, who don't actually have any hold on this company, still enjoy prosperity. And Black people, on the whole, have faced every new dawn of hunger, joblessness, and landlessness. So there's no economic justice in South Africa. The patterns of white privilege have just been entrenched. And I've written in my book that I think a tragedy of the ANC government is that they've normalized and crystallized the patterns of white wealth and Black poverty as if they're normal phenomenon in this country, rather than the creation of a monstrous man-made effort to keep Black people as second-rate citizens in this country. So if anyone in Europe is speaking about economic justice in South Africa, it is nowhere in sight. In fact, the reconciliation that we've apparently had as a nation has taken Black liberation further and further away. And white South Africans, of which I'm part, have never apologized or offered reparations for acts of inhumanity against our fellow Black South Africans. So South Africa today is a place where Black South Africans have never enjoyed justice.
You hinted on one or two points that I will still need you to build on that. What are the economic effects of this white dominance in terms of the industry?
Is that question to me?
Okay, let me take it again. You just made mention of the fact that the white dominates the economy in South Africa. I'm asking, what is the effect on the South African economy?
Well, the effect of that is that white people and white industries flourish, and that Black industries never get a hold up. In fact, there's been very little support of Black-run companies or large corporates. So white people are very clever. They invest in the politics of self-interest, and there's been minimal shift. So even the procurement of state-run companies, 90% of that is still in the hands of white people. So the result of that is an unequal society where Blacks almost remain as economic slaves in a system that doesn't serve them. Actually, in a system that has never been designed to face them. And what I've written too is that, apartheid ended not for moral reasons, but because economically it had become unviable. And what we're seeing in South Africa, I believe, is a system that is becoming increasingly unviable. You can't have a pool of 46% or so unemployment and expect that system to survive. So I think we have an economic system that is under great economic pressure to change. And unless we find a way to incorporate Black people who've been excluded, we are facing a crisis of grand proportion.
All right, Professor Ba, I need you to come in here. Earlier we did make mention of the fact that lack of creativity on the part of Africans has denied us so many things. Now, she's saying that the whites has dominated or has dominance over most of the economic structure in South Africa. Now, whose fault is that? Couldn't be also be the fact that South African people, they are not creative enough to take over their own domain?
That's a very critical question. I just want to build from what she said. In South Africa, we live in a country where over 70% of the land belongs to the whites and 15% to the coloreds, about 5% to Indians, and 4% goes to the black. So now you check it. Over 70% of land to the whites, 4% to the black. Now, how the black are going to survive? So there is inequality. So as long as this inequality is in the system, there can never be economic justice. It's impossible. So what the leaders in South Africa have succeeded in doing is to distract the citizenry from the real issues by creating problems here and there. I see that's why we are talking about Dudula. I said when we get there, we'll talk about that. There's a lot of distraction in the system to take us away from the real issues. What I just said now, like she said, are the real issues. How can you be productive when you don't have access to land? How can you build when you don't have access to land? How can you develop the economy? So what it means is that the black people will remain unlimited. I mean, they will remain limited when it comes to access to economic power. As long as the land to build is not in their hands, the land to develop is not in their hands. So they are pushed back. So being helpless, they see themselves from a helpless point where they can but be frustrated and create problem. So the problem of black people in this country is artificial. It's artificial in the sense that there is no economic balance. That is why South Africa is ranking as one of the most violent countries in the world, not because people in South Africa are criminals, but because of inequality that exists in reality in South Africa. That is the problem that we have here. If we must address the issue of economic justice, we must go back to where the problem is and fix the problem. And now, it's very unfortunate that we have the black authority impatient, and these things are still the way they are. You see, the only thing that changed is the nomenclature. That's the nomenclature of the past regime, okay? The oppressive regime. But the policies have not changed. The policies have not changed. The policies, somersault you see today, is really irrational. It doesn't really make sense. You ask yourself, how can this policy prosper this country? This kind of policies that are coming from government. Okay, restricted policies that will not allow you to do what you're supposed to do as an individual, to succeed, to bring even economy, to make impact into the economy of the country. So how do you think the country will move forward? It means the economy is just in the hands of few because it has been designed to be so. And as long as this will continue to happen, you will see heightened political tension, civil unrest, and inhuman acts of almost, we call it terrorism now. People, in recent time, you see what is happening in South Africa. Ordinary people are carrying AK-47. Is that not terrorism? So, irrespective of what people call it, but that's an act of terrorism. Okay, it's happening now. People are turning blind eye on it, calling it invasion and all of whatever you call it. But the truth is this: if these things are not addressed, we are sitting on a ticking bomb. Okay, and that will not be good for South Africa. Looking at the history where South Africa is coming from, this economic imbalance must be addressed. The sooner it is addressed, the better. The blacks are highly disenfranchised and they are highly distracted. so frustrated that they can't but create violence. They can't but commit crime to survive. That's the state. That's the truth of the matter. So these things has to be addressed from the system. If we must stop crime here, if we must address the issue of crime, when I talk about crime, not just talking about ordinary people, crime is in the system. In the system. Within the higher, the lower, the medium class, and the low class, and the poor of the poorest, there is crime. And why is it so? It is what the system has already put in place there. This inequality has created a long gap between the people and the system, and there is economic injustice.
Is that right? Now, Ms. Heller, I wanted to come in here. Whose responsibility is it to balance this inequality? And can it be done?
I think you're asking a provocative question and the right question.
It's none. Sorry, you can go ahead.
And because we can't paint a picture of Black South Africans as passive, inactive actors. They have a role. And actually, I'm busy with another book, and I'm almost tempted to call it. I'm dealing with the issue of white supremacy in South Africa, but I'm almost tempted to say white supremacy is a Black problem, because Black people are actually perpetuating the situation. And I know that sounds quite harsh, but I think there needs to be a development of a consciousness that is very different to what we see now. To say, and it all comes back to self-belief. I believe in myself, and I'm entitled to this, and I'm going to get it. But there isn't that consciousness, and unfortunately, I think we have a psyche where Black people are more interested in getting white affirmation than in helping their own Black brothers and sisters. White affirmation is of great value, and that's terrible, because white people don't care about Black people. They never have, they never will, and the reliance on white people to help edge Black people into a better situation, it's a pipe dream. Black people need to work, insist, and be far more demanding about economic justice than they are, because no one is going to bring it to them but themselves. And what we do is we have a very divided Black community in South Africa, deliberately so. I always say that Black disunity is the teething gel of white supremacy. And we see operations like Operation Dudulu further segmenting and dividing Black people. And it's in that division, like the professor says, that we get this politics of distraction to take our focus away from the real issues. So we need I know I keep going back to consciousness, but we do need a consciousness where people say, I'm not going to be distracted by these things, but I'm going to focus on my rights, that I'm legitimately the owner of this land, that I'm still a squatter in my own land, and we are going to force now the government to return our land, because after so many years, we still have a tiny percentage of land redistributed to Black people. So there needs to be a completely different mindset. And unfortunately, we have divided communities. I remember when at the last election, people were celebrating the fact that there were 43 or 48 Black parties, that this is a wonderful sign of democracy. But actually, when we analyze that, we can say this is a disastrous sign of democracy, because there should be one or two Black groups who say we are coming together as a force and we will win over the rights politically and economically. But the divisions are very much, to me, a white man's game. And to me, Black people are still playing a white man's game. And that is at the core of the problem.
All right, thank you so much. Now, real democracy in Africa, and that will bring us to migrant liberation in South Africa. I say, Professor, I need to come in on that. Okay, but for now, we have to take a short break, and we will return.
Okay.
We'll continue the discussion.
Clevenard in Diaspora Television is an internet online TV service. What sets us apart is a unique combination of hit African content, first and exclusive international free movies, series, musics, news, events, documentaries, tourism, teleshopping shows, youth TV programs, and live interviews. Cleve Nord Diaspora Television is available throughout sub-Saharan Africa and to the diaspora markets worldwide. Take your entertainment with you wherever you go. Watch on your smartphone, tablet, laptop, smart TV, depending on your device. Watch free movies with Cleve Nord Movies Television. Stop searching for free movies websites and watch Cleve Nord Movies Television. Watch your favorite African shows anywhere at any time. Don't forget to check out our top 5 TV channels created to get you informed. TV1, Cleve Nord in Diaspora Television. TV2, Cleve Nord Youth Television. TV3, Cleve Nord Movies Television. TV4, Cleve Nord Teleshopping Television. TV5, Cleve Nord Tourism Television. To start watching, sign up at www.clevenard.com and follow the easy steps. Once you're done, log into the Cleve Nord website or app on your device, click on any one of our 5 TV channels, and hit play. We will be very satisfied and happy to welcome you to our team as one of our new business partners. Contact info@clevenard.com +34 631 279811. Website www.clevenard.com.
You're welcome back. We are still discussing economic justice, migrants, and liberation in South Africa. Now, we'll go over to migrant liberation in South Africa. Okay, but Professor Oba, I need you to come in here and let's take it from the concept of Dudula. Okay, because they are somehow connected. Now, you are in South Africa and you heard reports of Operation Dudula in South Africa itself. What is it all about?
Okay, let me start by saying that number one, Dudula is just a nomenclature people want to give it. I'll see Dudula as an agenda, and also in as much as I see them as a non-entity, because Dudula is not a registered entity in South Africa. Dudula is just a group of locals, let me say aggrieved locals, who should have a genuine cause, but unfortunately, that genuine cause has been diverted to create a kind of impression because of political agenda of some few in power in South Africa. What that means is that the political class, they want to maintain a sense of dependency. That sense of dependency that you find in every South African. That is what Dudula is demonstrating, sense of dependency. Because if you look at those people who call themselves Dudula, these are unemployed folks, unemployed people who are not working, who are not paying for rent, who are not doing anything much. So who don't really understand what the economy is about. So this is why it has resulted into violence and all of that. Going to break shops belonging to foreigners, and those breaking the shop, they don't own shops. They don't know what it takes to rent a shop. So they're not paying for one. So it is easy to destroy the shops because they've been told that that's what will solve your problem. And they accept, yeah, that's going to solve our problem. And I tell you, it's not solving any problem. So I see, I'm sorry to use the word miscreants. I would say that Dudula has been, for me, I see it as a vigilante, if you like, and somehow miscreants trying to create confusion in the society. So I'm not giving them so much attention because Dudula has no place under the context of the law of South Africa. So I have no place for them in terms of the law, you see. So when we want to talk about migrants and this impact and sudden emergency of Dudula, I mean, look at it from the angle of politics. It has become a political agenda. Why do I say so? Because you can't live in a state where, looking at Dudula from my own point of view, is Dudula is a machinery political agenda. That's what it is. Whether you like it or not, whether they deny it or accept it, long as I live in South Africa, this is what I define Dudula as. That's number one. Number two, Dudula has become a vigilante group, as we have seen in recent times. People who go harassing people who have no right to harass people, but they do so, harassing people. Many people have lost their life in the name of Dudula harassment and all of that, and nobody has been brought to book. That's what I'm saying. Now, this same Dudula that is doing this same thing I'm talking about, none of them are arrested and prosecuted. Because under the law of South Africa, Dudula has no place. And the same Dudula is being escorted by the police. This is why we have to educate migrants. See, the fact that the migrant is that doesn't make him a criminal. The fact that the migrant is undocumented doesn't make him a criminal. The law is there. There is an approach. There is a channel for that. That is how you approach people. But you can't send miscreants on the street without harass people because they are migrants, legal or not. So you are creating a kind of environment that become ungovernable. So as far as I'm concerned, South Africa is a sovereign state that has power to govern itself, and everybody in South Africa has a right to life, has a right to provide the state. Therefore, Dula has the right to go harassing people because we have to.
All right, Professor Uba. I'll get back to you. Okay, I'll certainly get back to you on Operation Dudula. But Ms. Helen, I need you to come in here. What is the impact of Operation Dudula on the lives of migrants in South Africa?
You know, I think it's a terrible situation that we have at the moment, and I agree with the professor that it's almost an illegitimate group, an aggrieved group, but it's also a group that is causing great turmoil, emotionally, physically, and in real terms. I was reading the most terrible story of a Nigerian woman whose 3-month-old baby died in a shack fire that was set up by locals. So I don't think you can have a more heartbreaking story than that. So they're real human casualties in this ugly war. And I personally worry because I foresee great violence coming out of this. I almost see like a genocide of black on black violence. And I think we should take it seriously in terms of the damage that this group of vigilantes, as the professor says, can cause. And I think it is dangerous for both black South Africans and black African sisters and brothers from the continent. And one has to ask, what is behind this movement? And that's why I wrote, I think, in a controversial post, which has made me even more unpopular, is to say that I believe this, you have to wonder if this is a white-sponsored initiative, because it is in the interests of whites for black people to be divided like this and to turn on one another. It's almost like the black man is now doing the white man's work to keep power, economic and political, by attacking each other. And we see in South Africa a terrible situation of black on black violence, even economically, you know, even now physically through this movement. And it's extremely damaging. And I think Operation Dudula has been a good scapegoat for the ANC government, who are now not facing the fact that their systems are not working, that they are failing people in terms of delivery of health services. For instance, we can't blame foreigners for overburdening the system. Yes, they put pressure on a system which is not working, but they're not the cause. Neither are foreigners the cause of a lack of jobs in South Africa. The lack of jobs in South Africa is caused by a government that has not managed to do its job properly by creating jobs, by shifting economic power away from whites in the interests of black people. So foreigners, I'm even reluctant to call them foreigners because I believe Africa is one, but what we call foreigners from other African countries are a very convenient scapegoat for this government. And I even see, as we head towards the next election, I can see what the ANC strategy is. It's going to focus unfairly and unjustly on foreigners as the problem. And I see a lot of bloodshed. And I think it's a very, very shocking development in this country that if we don't stop it now, we are going to see a huge amount of life lost in the most vicious way.
So can that be averted? If it can be averted, how can it be? The loss of life.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking to the professor. Can you repeat that question?
Get back to him, definitely. No, I didn't need to answer that, please. You just made mention of you're saying conflicts and a loss of lives and all that. Do you think that can be averted? And if it can, how can it be done? Who is supposed to be responsible for that?
Well, I think if we had a responsible government who wasn't using this and fanning the flames as well along with these vigilante movements, we would have a more responsible response. As the professor says, none of these people have been taken into custody or charged criminally, but yet they've killed people, they've damaged property. But I almost feel the government is facilitating that. And we see there was a confrontation last week between the EFF and Operation Dudula, and it's almost like the EFF is made to be the villains, when all they're trying to do, in my view, is protecting the rights of Africans both here and foreign nationals, foreign visitors who happen to be in this country. And I think, you know, the ugly targeting of individuals in this country is very sick. It shows a lack of compassion, because people are fleeing from desperate situations. I mean, people are crossing rivers, they're crossing oceans to try and get a better life. And yet we are targeting those individuals rather than perhaps speaking to the governments from where they come and say, we have, you know, you need to sort out your own issues so that there is not an influx of people into other countries. So largely the so-called foreign nationals we're seeing in our countries should be treated with compassion. They are victims as much as anyone is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll take another short break here, and when we come back, we'll start with liberating migrants in South Africa. Please don't go away.
Hello there. Looking for an African movie? Search no further. Clevenard African Movies TV is here for you. We are dedicated to the acceleration of African films, TV series, documentaries, and lots more. Explore our movies at home or on the go. Clevenard Movies is free to watch on clevenard.com. Don't miss this opportunity. Hurry now. Sign up and subscribe today. Hello there.
It's all right, welcome back. You're still on My Opinion on Clevenard TV. All right, Professor Ubala, I need you to give us an insight into this issue. We'll be discussing Operation Dudula and how it affects the migrants in South Africa. So what is the responsibility of the migrants itself in making sure that the internal conflicts in the land are being resolved? Do you think they have any role to play to appease the aggrieved members of the Operation Dudula now?
Okay, thank you for that question. Definitely, there is no way the migrants will not play a role, because they are the one being attacked. So like I've been advocating, I said to migrants, over the years, I've watched this kind of oppression go on in South Africa, and we've been advocating for peace. We've been having consultation with locals, even with the police, and different quarters and institutions in this country. But surprisingly, you see, these have not really worked. It has not worked, and it's concerning. It's concerning in the sense that every year there is attack, xenophobic attack in South Africa. Attacks linked to xenophobia. And it's very unfortunate.
Wait. Okay. Let me even chip in something there. These attacks, is it actually carried out on the black migrants alone, or is it all over?
In this attack,
Who are the main targets? Who are the main targets of the attack?
in these attacks, African migrants are targeted. That's the fact. The study shows that the evidences are there. So they are targeted. So they see black migrants as opportunists who take their jobs away. Okay, so which is not the fact. There is no data in South Africa that can prove that the migrants are the one taking jobs. Because remember, in South Africa, for you to work here, you need certain documentation to work. And these migrants, not actually, how many of them have this documentation to actually fit into the system? So most of them you see working in some places, maybe gardeners and cleaning jobs, those kind of menial works that doesn't really pay, which South Africans themselves refuse to do. So is that the work they are crying for? So it calls for another concern. Okay. Aside from migrants who came here to study, some of them did relatively well, who found themselves in one place or that because they were doing well. Or look at maybe you say professionals like doctors who are working, because in most hospitals here you can see doctors who are working and they are migrants and they are saving lives. Those people are not mentioned because they are saving lives and they are saving South African lives and everybody's life. So they are not a problem. But you see, these other migrants, more especially economic migrants who fled home because of lack of leadership, like we said, bad government, tribal issues and clashes, whatever the case might be, that find their way into this country for greener pasture, they face the same problem in the system because they find it difficult to be documented, not because they don't want to be documented. That's another set. Another set is this set that came into this country legitimately, but when their documents are about to elapse, they will no longer be documented. You see, they are rejected or their documents are just dumped at the Home Affairs, the Home Office. That becomes problematic. Now, when you dump people's documents at Home Office for 5 years, for 10 years, do you know what you are doing? You are putting pressure on the system. So at the end of the day, you blame these migrants. They don't want to be documented. They are not documented. They are illegal. They are not illegal. When somebody flew into this country, you can't call him or her an illegal migrant. That is unacceptable because you stamped him at the point of entry. Not only that, you assessed his personality. You have his fingerprint in your system. So he's not an illegal migrant. Now, you are the one making him illegal by not continuing his documentation. Then it becomes, you call him illegal. And the next thing, you charge locals to attack the person by making some of these utterances that we see that are causing problems, issuing death threats on migrants, which is unacceptable, which is uncalled for, that we have seen it in recent times. These are some of the problems that we have. But recently, we have come up to say migrants should start speaking for themselves. Start advocating for yourselves. You are being attacked. Don't be scared to go to the media and speak about these attacks. Why? Xenophobia in this country doesn't just erupt. How? Where is it coming from? People might talk about xenophobia, but before it will start, it starts actually from the media. That's where it starts. And it starts from the mainstream media in this country. So which is concerning. Now, we are saying as migrant community, will you wait for people to go to the media and tell you will be attacked? We'll deal with foreign nationals and so and so. Every foreign national must go. You hear it on a national TV, loud and clear. And what do you need to do? You wait for them to come, and they're going to come, and they actually come. And people will be attacked. Lives will be lost. Businesses will be destroyed. Livelihood will be destroyed. And nobody will be held to account. So what are we supposed to do? People should advocate for justice.
But isn't there a place of the government interference in all this?
That's what.
Because I would have said that instead of the migrants taking the law into their own hands, the government could have done one or two things to curtail all this.
Thank you. Like what you just said now, where you have in this system where locals go to the streets make announcements. They don't just go to the streets. They make flyers and post it all over the social media that all foreigners must go. And on that fateful day, they come in their numbers and start attacking people. And you see police following them, doing this same dirty job. No one is arrested. So what do you think that is happening? So it's concerning. And I tell you, it's quite unfortunate that this is happening in South Africa. And it makes me, I don't know the right word to use, that something like that is happening in South Africa. And I ask myself, if we see something like that happening in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Zambia, in all of these African countries, will anybody travel to another country? That would be impossible. But it's happening in South Africa over and over. Where is the place of AU? Where is the place of United Nations? That's the question you should be asking. So you see, it's a problem of leadership. It's not just about the people going to destroy shops. This is more than going on the streets to break the shops or business of people. These things are in the system, like I said before. If, for example, let me give you a very good example. Recently, the Home Affairs said they are going to recall the permits of Zimbabweans, over 100 and something thousand people who are legitimate in the system because migrants are putting pressure on their system, right? That's number one. Number two, you say migrants are illegal, they are undocumented. Now, and you want to remove people who are documented, who are working in the system, who are contributing to the system, who are taxpayers in the system, because they are Zimbabweans, and you want to take them off from the system to make them undocumented. And you want to tell me you have a good policy. So now, these things are contradictory because they contradict themselves. They are crying for undocumented migrants. At the same time, they want to remove people who have documents from the system and make them undocumented. What about those people who are not documented? So it means the target is not about undocumented migrants or illegal migrants. The issue is, this is just an agenda to distract people from the real issues. If you cannot provide leadership, what do you do? And I want to tell you, this also has to do with corruption. You cannot deny the fact that there is corruption in the system. There is corruption in the system. And as long as there is corruption in the system, these things will continue to happen until this corruption is dealt with. You cannot fill the gap of corruption overnight. Therefore, there is something you must do. And I think xenophobia is playing that role to distract the masses or the citizenry from the real issues. Because foreigners are not the one working at SAA. Foreigners are not the one working at Transnet. Foreigners are not the one working at ESCOM. These systems are collapsing under the noses of South Africans who are managers of this system. Foreigners are not the one in the South African parliament, for Christ's sake. The president of this country is not a foreign national. So they don't know where to, vent their anger to, who to hold responsible. That's why the South Africans also need to be educated. They need to be carried along to understand leadership is tasking, is demanding. You need to demand for leadership. You can't demand leadership from foreign nationals who came into your country to seek for greener pasture. That's unacceptable and very rational to think that way. And that's what has happened. So we, as, looking from the side of migrants, I think while we are trying to advocate for peace, advocate for justice for migrants, we also need to educate South Africans to say, look at how it is. Now tell me, how can a South African living in Alexandria march all the way from Alexandria to the city of Johannesburg to break someone's shop simply because he is a foreign national? Meanwhile, in Alexandria where he lives, he cannot rent a shop and pay for it because it's expensive. Now, how would the same person accuse someone who is paying for the shop in the city that you are taking my shop? Is there any shop takeable in South Africa without being paid for? That shop does not exist. If it is for free, they should go and take shops. But it's not for free. Okay? So some of the excuses that you hear about migrants is very funny. There is no data that shows that migrants are actually the one committing crimes in this country. I'm not saying that there are not migrants who are committing crimes. No. But what I'm saying is that there is no data that has proven so far that the cause of crime is because of migrants. The cause of lack of job is because of migrants. So therefore, It is irrational for anyone, whether in the political corridor or anywhere, to say that migrants are the cause of problem in South Africa. They are putting pressure on our system. What about the migrants who are medical doctors who are saving lives in South Africa? Why can't they talk about those migrants? The professionals who are here working, helping the economy. Every migrant that comes to this country that owns a shop is contributing to the economy of South Africa. South Africans should know that. If a migrant can come here without a cent and he or she is able to rent a shop and pay for it and feed those shops with goods bought in South Africa, that person should be commended. People should know how to create economy and not to destroy economy. In fact, those who are roaming the street like the Operation Dudula are problems.
Is that right? Is that right, Professor? You are going to continue with that. But Ms. Heller, my next question is, we are going to be discussing effective liberation for migrants in South Africa. But before now, I need Professor to actually speak more of what you were trying to explain, which is the economic effect of Dudula, okay, in South Africa. How does Operation Dudula affect the economy of South Africa?
Okay. I mean, it's obvious looking at what is going on, because why these issues are unfolding, many shops are closed. And you know what it means for a family man to close his shop for a day or two. It means the bread for the family for that day will not.
Please hold on. You are going to take it into perspective. How it affects the migrants, one, then how it affects the supposed owner of the land.
Okay. Looking at this, because it's like unrest. When we talk about Operation Dudula going to attack or harass migrants in the country, we just call it unrest or vigilantism, whatever you call it. And when that happens, you need to know that these people will lock up their shops or businesses in those affected areas, meaning there will be no business, there will be no sales. That will affect the migrants' income for that day. The family might not be able to feed for that day or several days from that day. It will also make negative impact on South Africans. Remember the taxes. Somebody will jump on the taxes, including South Africans and migrants alike. We are not thinking in those ways. The same migrants go to shop in ShopRite, in Pick and Pay, and wherever you call it. They live in this country. They increase sales. So when you attack them, they are running for their lives. There will be no sales in Pick and Pay, in whatever you call it. They are going into hiding because they are scared of their own lives and their shops are closed. So it makes heavy impact on both sides, not just on the side of migrants. South Africans will be affected and a lot of money will be lost. Each time there is unrest in this country don't lose less than 2 billion rands. Between 2 to 4 billion rands are lost per day. So why will anybody encourage a movement like Operation Dudula to continue? And you are crying the economy is going down. The economy will continue to go down as long as you incite violence and instigate to attack migrants in this country. The negative impact is so huge that the government will not be able to fill the gap in the next 50 years if this should continue in this country. That is why we should all stand up and begin to advocate for justice and equality on the side of migrants. And everybody that lives in South Africa, they deserve to be treated well as humans. They have fundamental human rights to protect. That's what we should be doing.
Yes, and I thank you so much. Now, Ms. Heller, effective liberation for migrants in South Africa. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a larger issue than the day-to-day costs, and it is that we are putting off dealing with the systemic issues that still haunt the everyday life of everyone who lives here. So every single day that we are distracted by fighting battles, unworthy and unnecessary and immoral battles with migrants and locals, we are allowing white monopoly capital and the white system of power to gain more and more traction rather than dismantle that as we should. And it also places very conveniently Black people in a small sector of the economy, fighting for the crumbs of the economy. So Black South Africans are fighting for basic level jobs with migrants rather than fighting for what they're entitled to and which belongs to them, the lion's share of the land and the lion's share of the economy. So it's placing black people in a small battle zone against the wrong people when they should be fighting the system itself. And that's why I think it's a very convenient system for the powers that be, and probably why we're not seeing police and the government acting as strongly as they should, because it's keeping black people busy fighting small battles rather than fighting the real war, which is a war of economic justice in this country. And that's where I see the danger. We are just delaying and delaying, perhaps into eternity, the prospect of black economic liberation.
Is that right? When you say economic justice, what are your recommendations for that?
Well, the first thing that needs to happen, and it's become the swear word in South Africa, is land. Land has to be returned. And the government has no will to do that. I was at the ANC Land Summit in 2017 and spoke very strongly against the general mood and discussion that was there, which was mostly conducted by white experts, which you have to wonder about, and where there was compromises on the issue of expropriation without compensation. And we see that the ANC has backtracked on its NASREC recommendations to expropriate land. So land is first and foremost not only the key economic imperative, but a critical moral and ethical imperative. It is at the heart of justice in South Africa. It's the heart of restoring dignity to the black child after it's been so brutally taken by white regimes. And unless we address that, we are not going to go anywhere. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as the ANC is in power, we will never see economic justice or land returned, because we're seeing that the party that we thought would be a liberation party is actually a party that is just pushing white interests. And I do feel sorry for black South Africans, because they have been for the last 350, 400 years second-rate citizens in their own country. And so I can understand why they feel aggrieved now by foreign nationals. But the truth is, it's their own government that is placing them as second-rate. So unless land is given back, rightfully so, there is no justice here.
Professor Oba?
Yes.
Let's get to hear you add to what she has just said.
Yes. Yeah.
Economic justice.
She has said it masterfully. I would just like to add with what she has said so far. We cannot continue to point finger at the white people at this time. After several years, if you look at how many years South Africa is in their liberation, by now the black government should have set a pace for proper economic justice, to empower South Africa. But it's unfortunate that what is happening now is happening. Like she rightly said, South Africans should start thinking inward, building human capacity, this self-reliance, that there should be a sense of self-reliance to know that there is something I can do, instead of relying on the system to do everything for you. Because if the policies are right, there are things that will work on. So in that view, we have to see that the French government put in place policies that will empower the people, not policies that will make the people to be dependent on them. If you look at the ordinary South African, they depend on the politicians to survive. This is why when they call the shots, xenophobia will break out in this country. Why? It's a sense of dependency. So, and like I said before, many people who are engaged in these acts are those who are going to queue every month to receive 350 rents, that can't buy them data to communicate on social media, that can't buy them meals to feed their kids. It's uncalled for. There should be a kind of awakening within the people of South Africans. There should be awakening. They should take their eyes off from these migrants. Migrants can never be their problem. What can we do? They should place a proper demand on the government. This is black government now. They should provide quality education for the people. Jobs, they should be able to create jobs. This is the responsibility of government to create jobs. Now, the issue is no longer about going to school. You go to school, you come out from school. Where is job for you? If the government is creating jobs, you will remain unemployed. And before you know it, the people resort to crime. So if you want to stop crime, if you want to improve the percentage of the percentage of unemployment in the country, why not create jobs? Why not create jobs? So the bottom line of it is that we need leadership. Leadership is expected from the ANC government. The ANC government has been in power since the inception of liberation, so we should demand leadership from them. Give us leadership. Give us good health system. Give us good education system. Give great jobs for our youths. That's what they should do. Deliver quality services to our communities. Stop sending us to migrants who have nothing to offer, who just came here to survive. They have little to offer, except those who have come into the system, create their own jobs, and start offering things. Unfortunately, some of these migrants are even employing South Africans now to work for them. I have to tell you how bad it is. So, meaning the government is not doing enough. We must be bold enough to tell the government, you are not doing enough for us. Create jobs for us. I expect more youth from South Africa, more especially the black youth, to be more reasonable to say, this government, you've not given us jobs, and we want jobs from you. Or else, we'll not decide who leads us in this country. The power belongs to the people, and the power should return to the people. Power returning to the people is not to create violence in the community, destroying things, but to make decisive steps, making good decisions, and demanding governance from the right quarters. We have parliament in this country. They should pass good laws. They should they should pass good policies that will change the fabric of this country. The social fabric of this country is losing its ground day by day. How many people will be safe to walk around in South Africa in the night without having a fear of being attacked by mobs in the night? You know, why? It's economic hardship. It's not because people want to rob people, but they are frustrated. That's the only way they think they can get by. That's why there is crime. So you can't live in mansion and reduce other people to abject poverty, and you say you are fighting crime. That will be impossible. There should be quality in this country, and the quality can only come when we become creative, start creating jobs, create quality education, not people going to school to read read theories they cannot practice. How many engineers do we have that are produced in the country? How many car manufacturing companies?
That's actually another topic for this because it's a very broad one, not just in South Africa, but I think all over Africa. But for today, let's just stick to what we have on ground. All right, we'll take a short break, another short break here. In fact, our last short break for this program, and when we return, we'll be discussing Miss Hella's book, No White Lies.
Introducing Clevenard More Food. Clevenard More Food is an African-based startup and fastest-growing food delivery player in Africa. At Clevenard More Food, we find solutions that redefine the food ordering and delivery space every single day. Order food from your favorite restaurants near you. Our aim is to transform the way people acquire what they eat and make food shopping easy for the general public. Help change the way people order food online and create a better and faster way to get it delivered to your doorstep. We invite every restaurant to sign up your restaurants to Clevenard More Food to enable you reach out to a larger customer base and increase your brand visibility. Download the best food delivery app now. Order from your favorite restaurants and track on the go. Download in 3 steps. App 1, Clevenard More Food, is for customers who want to order food for delivery from our app. App 2 is for Clevenard store owner. This is for restaurants who want to register their menu onto the Clevenard More Food. App 3 for Clevenard delivery staff. This app is for our delivery partners. You know what? We are always looking for pickup and delivery partners who take exceptional pride in being a hunger savior. We find solutions that redefine the food ordering and delivery space every single day. Sign up now, buy, and we deliver to your doorstep promptly. Clevenard, more food, more sales, less stress. Contact telephone +34 631 279811. info@clevenard.com or clevenard2011@gmail.com. www.clevenard.net or www.clevenard.com. Introducing Clevenard More Food.
Welcome back. All right, Miss Hella, we've been discussing the dollar, discussing other issues pertaining to South Africa itself, and then you are an author, and then you wrote a book, No White Lies, Black Politics and White Politics. I'd like you to let's get to hear your views on this topic.
Well, I was motivated to write the book because just to expose the truths in South Africa that aren't often spoken about. And I think possibly the title itself is quite pertinent because I speak about white power and black politics. And in truth, black people are quite good at politics, but less so with power. And the phenomenon of white power in a black government, black South Africa, is just insane. Because I write about how in democratic South Africa, the tender of whiteness has just been extended. It's as if it's got a lifetime extension. And so whilst people regard South Africa as a black country, I say it's still a white-run country, just under the guise of a black government. And I say the solution will never lie in the current government, but in the works and ideology and leadership of people who were assassinated because their ideas were too potent in South Africa. And I refer particularly to Steve Biko, who actually had to be killed on the altar of white supremacy, because his ideas, if they were allowed to flourish, would have freed the black man and black woman. So I plea in my book for a return to a consciousness that is not one of false reconciliation, but where the black child is put first and foremost, where the white person needs to repent and apologize and make accounts for apartheid atrocities. But what we have in this country is white people not taking responsibility for the terrible acts against fellow South Africans. And we have black people who I think are too tolerant of white privilege and the white man in the country. So it's really a plea to shift the dynamics, and mostly perhaps to black people to say, trust less white people. They're not going to do anything for you. Through history, we've seen that white people don't relinquish power. So it's a matter of taking power, and not on the back of a reconciliatory charterist movement like the ANC, but on a radical ideology of black consciousness. That's how the country will be saved. And if we had black consciousness, we would have an element of Pan-Africanism, where the black child from other countries in Africa would never in 100 years be considered as the enemy, which is what's happening now. And that is once again the tragedy of a government that has no ideology and no real love for the black person in this country.
It's all right. So with what you've explained so far, and with your job or your responsibility as a political analyst, would you say you've been able to achieve your aims?
Well, the thing is that it's quite challenging in this country, because what we see is the government doesn't want an interruption of what I call the master narrative. They want to preach reconciliation when no reconciliation has happened. So black people have been reconciled with poverty and white people with privilege. So if you interrupt that narrative, you don't get a voice. So as I was saying, most of my interviews are done internationally. So as a political analyst, I can speak, but my voice is shut out because we are going towards a country that doesn't tolerate different opinions. So the work of an analyst and a different thinker in this country is extremely difficult, but we will persevere. And as you know, my voice can be shut out, but I will always write and speak for justice. And eventually, I do believe the message will go out. And I thank you for the opportunity to be on the station. It's much appreciated.
All right, thank you so much. I've actually just got your last word based on your explanation. So, Professor Oba, I need you to give us a last word. You know, some exponents will tell you, oh, South African, you are preventing others, which is the migrant now, from settling in your own town. Now, if other South African countries had to take from your own example, how does it affect the entire system? Because if you don't want me in your country, how do you think I will want you in my own country? Just give us a last word while trying to explain that.
Okay. What I'll just conclusion, I summed everything up by saying that South Africans should start thinking. You know, we should be a people who will use our minds to think. God gave us minds; we need to use them, and there is no better time to use our minds than now. You know, critical times. I mean, demands critical measures. Now, if things are going out of place, I mean, it means some people are not thinking the right way. There should be a shift from what things used to be, what it's supposed to be. It's just a common sense to say you cannot tell migrants to leave your country while your own citizens are all over the world. Let's start from Africa. Let me give an example to Nigeria. South African businesses are flourishing in Nigeria. Where we have South African banks, telecommunication, South Africa, right? We have everything you eat in South Africa, you find them in Nigeria. So if you're South Africa in Nigeria, you won't be disadvantaged. And Nigerians appreciate and cherish South Africans in their country, for example. And in Ghana, the same thing. So why would someone wake up in the morning and say migrants are their problem and start chasing them, harassing them? So it's uncalled for. It means people are not thinking. So we should change the narrative. People should start telling their stories. This government is not telling their stories the way it should be. They should tell the children stories, because when we talk about xenophobia, it's also the young kids are also involved in this problem. Go to schools and see cases there. It's there. I've been caught several times because of young kids trying to practice what they watch on the TV. So the leader should be held responsible. That is irresponsibility on the side of our leaders, who are supposed to be our elders. We should look up to them. They are not living up to the expectation. And it's a shame that we are seeing something like that in this time. We are not living in stone age where we call out people to go and stone people, throw things at people, harass people. Is uncalled for. And my advice is that South Africa should not continue to engage in this trend, because we live in Africa. Africans are watching South Africa, and I tell you, they are running out of patience. Can you imagine you wake up one day, God forbid, you have young youth have risen against South African interests in Nigeria? What do you think other Africans will follow suit? But we don't want it to be at that point. I believe Nigerian youth are very responsible. They know where their problems are, and they channel their energy right to their politicians, demanding for leadership. I think South African youth should learn from that. That's what they should do, and not turn to innocent, poorest of the poor migrants who came to this country just to survive hardship. That's what I. Thank you so much.
Yes, all right. Thank you so much, Professor and Ms. Helen. It's been almost an hour in this interview, and you guys have provided answers to basic questions that we all actually asked in the program today. So good to have you with us this morning. So, and we hope to get you back some other time. So I thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yes. So viewers, thank you so much for staying with us for this past 1 hour, and till we come your way next time with another edition of this program is on. I remain Frank Alide.